Elijah didn't try to talk his way out of it when I caught him red-handed in bed. He just lazily fastened his shirt buttons, cupped my cheek and smiled. Evelyn, 8 years together, don't you ever get bored? Honestly, you should try someone new. The old me would have felt my chest constrict so tight I could barely breathe at his words. But the me who'd been reborn just nodded in agreement. He was right. In my past life, I'd been too stubborn to accept the truth. I'd refused to believe our 8-year relationship could rot from the inside out. I'd clung to him so desperately that I made a fool of myself for everyone to see. It wasn't until he died in an accident that everything changed. After inheriting his entire fortune and becoming a billionaire, I'd finally woken up. Young, fresh new lovers really were far more satisfying. The room still reeked of sex and cheap perfume. Elijah pulled the covers up over the girl's body, as if afraid I'd lash out at her. But I already knew who she was. Last time around, I'd ripped that sheet away in a hysterical rage. Mia Parker, the new secretary in Elijah's office. She had the face of an innocent little lamb, and the ambition to claw her way to the top. She was the one who'd texted me the hotel room number. The reason I'd found this place at all. In my past life, the searing pain had turned me into a raving lunatic. I'd smashed the entire room to pieces. They'd scrambled to cover themselves, half-dressed and humiliated. After that scene, Elijah had thrown all caution to the wind. He'd frozen my bank cards and paraded Mia around at every banquet like he had nothing to hide. I'd been heartbroken and begged him for a divorce. In his office, he hadn't even looked up from his desk. Evelyn, stop throwing a fit. Who else is gonna give you this fancy rich wife life but me? You want a divorce? Fine. Over my dead body, you'll be my wife for the rest of your life. And then he really had died. Our marriage had ended, just like that. I blinked myself back to the present, feeling a little awkward. It had been so long since I'd seen Elijah alive that standing here with him right in front of me felt strange. He'd been dead for what felt like an eternity. I picked up my Hermes bag from the side table, stepped back politely, and said, "You're right. You two carry on then. I'll show myself out." Elijah's hand stilled mid-motion. Then he smirked, lazy and amused. Had a change of heart? Good girl. This is much better. Behave, and I'll wire another $5 million to your account. Go treat yourself to something nice. Only $5 million, I almost scoffed. After inheriting his estate, I'd lived a life of endless luxury, spending money like water. Right before I'd woken up back here, I'd been about to set sail on a vacation. My brand new yacht was docked at the marina. A whole crowd of party people had everything ready for my arrival. Men with perfect 8-pack abs were waiting for me to enjoy. And then I'd open my eyes, right back to the day I caught my dead husband cheating. I let out a quiet breath, already impatient. Have a nice night. Then, sorry to interrupt, I turned to open the door. And Elijah's shocked voice called out behind me, "Wait, where are you going?" "To try someone new," I said easily. Elijah started walking toward me, like he was about to say something. Mia's weak, breathy voice cut him off. "Mr. Voss? My chest hurts so bad. Come here." He froze. I slipped out the door before he could stop me. While I waited for the elevator, a text popped up from him. "Be good, don't be mad. Go home and rest. She's just a fling. Nothing's gonna change your place as my wife." I ignored it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name, smiled to myself, and typed out a message. "Lucas, wanna come out for drinks? I think my husband just cheated on me." "Evelyn, your husband cheats and you call me? Why call him?" "Oh, right, because in my past life, after Elijah died, he'd done everything in his power to seduce me. One night, he'd held me close, sated and warm, and sighed softly. Evelyn, I've liked you for so long, years before Elijah did. If I'd been brave enough back then, we never would have wasted all this time." I traced my fingers over his damp chest and said quietly, "I was still married to him back then. You know, you didn't love him anymore. How am I the other man?" He'd argued, unapologetic besides. "We met first. First come, first served. If anyone's the homewrecker, it's him." Lucas was right. We'd gone to high school together. We'd barely spoken back then. All I'd remembered of him was the quiet, gorgeous guy from the class next door, the one every girl turned to stare at when he walked by. We'd ended up at the same college, but I'd started dating Elijah in our first year. He'd been the one to pursue me. Elijah had been charming, quick to smile, talented at everything. His guitar playing had stolen the show at every class party. The first time he'd seen me, his eyes had lit up like they held stars. He'd leaned in, the clean scent of his cologne wrapping around me. "Evelyn, will you give me a chance to win you over?" My ears had burned hot. Under his gaze, I'd nodded, shy and giddy. When we were together, he'd been the perfect doting boyfriend. He'd bought dinner for my roommates, studied with me in the library, walked me around the track at night. He'd kept his distance from every other girl, and done everything I asked without complaint. No one could have found a single fault with him back then. After we graduated, he'd started his own business. Those had been hard days. We'd lived in a run-down neighborhood, in a tiny apartment with no sunlight. It was dirt cheap, barely $800 a month. I don't know how many times rain leaked through the ceiling, dripping onto our wet laundry. I'd never complained, but Elijah, who'd always joked and smiled through everything, had suddenly had tears in his eyes. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to live like this for me. When we make it big, I'll buy us a big house with a proper washer and dryer, and floor-to-ceiling windows where the sun can shine in. No more trekking to the laundromat with armfuls of wet clothes ever again." Back then, I believed love was all we needed. Soon enough, his company started turning a profit. It grew and climbed higher every year. When he made his first $10,000, he'd bought us a fancy fresh buttercream cake, the kind we could never afford back then. When he made his first $1 million, we moved into a sunny apartment and finally had our own in-unit laundry. When he made his first $100 million, we bought a mansion and got married. I never had to worry about housework again. All I had to do was take care of myself and plan for our future. When he hit his first $1 billion and took the company public, everything changed. He started staying out all night. Other women's perfume started clinging to his shirts. He started getting annoyed at me for focusing on him too much. Couldn't I find something to do with myself? When Mia's text had come through, sunlight had been streaming through the giant floor-to-ceiling windows of our mansion. It had been so bright it made my eyes burn, so bright it made me cry. 8 years. How many 8 years does a person get in a lifetime? As if to make it up to Mia, he'd spoiled her rotten. He'd bid on jewelry for her, made headlines, let the whole world know. At our class reunion, all the classmates who'd once envied our love had fallen awkwardly silent. But Elijah had been perfectly casual, even waving at Lucas as he walked by. "Mr. Davenport, if you hadn't invested in me back then, I never would have made it. Come on, have a drink with me." Lucas had been tall and broad, his suit making him look even more imposing. His handsome face had been blank. He'd glanced at me briefly, then ignored Elijah's glass. "I'm driving tonight. No drinking." Elijah had laughed and downed the drink himself. "Mr. Davenport's a busy man. I get it, but I'll never forget it. When my company was on the brink of collapse, you came back from the States and saved me. I owe you everything." That was when I'd found out. The huge order that had saved Elijah's company all those years ago, it had come from Lucas. On the way home from the reunion, Elijah had slurred drunkenly, "Evelyn, I'm never divorcing you. Get that through your head. We're gonna be stuck together for the rest of our lives. I'm not giving anyone else a shot at you." His voice had been cold, final. It had been a warm summer night, but his words had sent a shiver down my spine. Back then, if he didn't want a divorce, I couldn't make him. But I'd never understood who he meant by anyone else, not until his funeral. The rain had been falling soft and steady. I'd stood there in a black dress and hat, thanking guests as they came. I hadn't bothered with an umbrella. My chest had felt hollow. I'd never expected him to die just like that. Mia had stormed up, screaming and sobbing, ranting about all the promises Elijah had made her. It had almost been funny. At his own funeral, his true love couldn't even be bothered to respect his memory. I'd been about to call security to drag her out when the rain suddenly stopped falling over me. I'd looked up and met Lucas's dark eyes. He'd been in a black suit, polite and steady as he leaned down. "Congratulations, Evelyn." After we got together, he told me the day he heard Elijah was dead, he'd popped open a bottle of champagne to celebrate. I pulled myself back to the present. On my phone, Lucas was still playing it cool. "Send me your address. We went to school together. I can't just leave you alone like this." I almost laughed out loud. He was such a hypocrite right now. "I'm going to encounter for a drink. You coming?" I didn't wait for a reply. I told my driver to head there. I'd barely wrapped my hand around a wine glass when someone slid into the seat next to me. He reeked of heavy cologne, leaning in close with a sleazy smile. "First time here, beautiful? Wanna let me buy you a drink?" "Beat it." The low voice came from right behind me. My fingers tightened around my glass. The guy stood up, glanced over and gasped, "Damn, with looks like that, you don't need to poach other people's targets." I almost snort laughed. Lucas sat down beside me. His faint, cool cologne washed away the stench of the other guy's. Evelyn, your husband cheats on you, and you call me? I'm not his friend, we barely know each other though. He paused, his tone shifting. If you need a divorce lawyer, I can refer you to a good one. I blinked. I remembered when I'd been fighting Elijah's relatives over the inheritance in my past life. He'd said the exact same thing. Back then, I'd been so grateful. I'd thought he'd recommended the lawyer out of kindness, because he'd been friends with Elijah. When I'd told him that later, he'd actually looked disgusted. Him, as if he'd ever be my friend, he'd tilted my chin up with his long fingers, his mouth moving soft and slow against mine. His rough, quiet voice had melted into the kiss. I did it for this. I snapped back to the present and smiled at him. You're not friends with Elijah? If you weren't friends, why'd you give him all that money back then? I paused, deliberately letting my voice sharpen. I knew it. All you men are the same. He didn't get mad. He didn't even try to explain. He just held my gaze, steady and unflinching. Evelyn, you've had too much to drink. Let me take you home. Take me home? I don't have a home anymore. The words left my mouth, and my chest gave a hard, sudden thud, like the old Evelyn. The one from this timeline was still hurting somewhere deep inside. My eyes stung before I could stop them. He was right. For the me right now, 8 years of love wasn't something you could just let go of overnight. In my past life, after I'd caught him cheating, I hadn't even known where to go, back to the place I'd always called home. Outside the mansion, the roses he'd planted when he proposed were still blooming. But in that hotel room, the red sheets they'd fucked in had burned themselves into my eyes. There were so many roses in the world. Why had he given her my favorite kind? But the me right now already knew better. There were so many men, so many women in the world. Not all of them were as shameless as those two, and their so-called true love. I'd seen how that ended, after Elijah died, when I'd taken Mia to court to get back all the marital assets he'd spent on her. She'd screamed that the bastard had died at the worst possible time. That was when I'd finally let it all go. Thinking about that, I looked back at the man in front of me, playing all innocent and proper. I knew him too well. I could read every thought behind his eyes, right now. He was thinking, baby, can I come home with you? We weren't close yet. Not at this point in time. We'd only really gotten close after Elijah died, sitting in his passenger seat, with the night wind on my face. I'd thought about it, right now. I was just some girl he'd gone to high school with, someone he barely knew. The closest we'd ever gotten back then was at a school sports day. I'd been manning the water bottle stand. He'd walked over and grabbed one from me. He'd been breathless from running, sweat sticking his dark hair to his forehead. In the sunlight, his handsome face had glowed like polished diamond. He'd fumbled for cash, then paused and frowned. Hey, I only have a 20 on me. Can I Venmo you the rest? I can save your number. That was why he'd been sitting in my contacts all these years, with that silly cat profile picture he never changed. The car pulled to a stop. He'd driven me back to the mansion. The night air was soft. He opened the passenger door. Evelyn, can you walk on your own? I shook my head slowly, looked up at him, and smiled. I watched his ears turn bright red. Want me to carry you in on my back? He asked after a beat, his voice low. No, I want you to carry me in your arms. My voice was soft, honeyed. I knew he couldn't resist it, back when we were together. If I ever talked to him like that, he'd lose all control. Sure enough, he hesitated for a second, then reached over stiffly to unbuckle my seatbelt, and lifted me gently into his arms. I looped my arms around his neck, his soft hair brushed against my jaw. Being back in his familiar arms felt like coming home. I sighed contentedly, nuzzling my cheek against his chest. He'd been walking steady, but he froze all at once, his voice rough. Evelyn, you're drunk. I'm not Elijah. I didn't say anything. I just pressed my cheek closer to his chest. Mabel, the housekeeper, was inside when he carried me in. She didn't even blink at the sight of me in a stranger's arms, just told Lucas to set me down on the couch. In my past life, she'd known about Elijah's affair long before I did. She'd never said a word. But when I'd found out the truth, she'd given me solid, undeniable proof of his cheating. That was how I'd learned he'd even brought Mia to our study to fool around while I was gone. Mia had deliberately tucked her underwear into a crack in the bookshelf. When I'd found out, I'd moved out of the mansion that same night. I'd stayed up all night in a hotel room, a cold, heavy weight in my chest. It had made me sick to my stomach. This place I'd called home. He'd brought his mistress here to fuck. Right under my roof, he'd trampled all over my pride. Like it meant nothing. That had been the final straw. The thing that made me determined to divorce him. But on the flip side, even if I cheated, she'd never tell him. That was just how housekeepers in wealthy households survived. Sir, I'll go make her a warm glass of water with honey. Could you watch her for a minute? Lucas draped a throw blanket over me. I grabbed his sleeve. He looked at me, surprised. I just smiled, my words clear and steady. Lucas, kiss me. He froze, conflict flashed across his face. And he tried to gently pull his arm away. No, Evelyn, you're drunk. You'll regret this when you sober up. Maybe he was right. Maybe the alcohol had just made me bolder. I tugged him toward me. He fell forward, catching himself just in time, close enough to feel my breath, but not close enough to hurt me. I kissed him. Lucas, your body's way more honest than your mouth. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. I stretched and wandered downstairs. Elijah was sitting at the dining table, drinking coffee, smiling at me like nothing had happened. Good morning, wife. You look beautiful today, glowing. Did I? I touched my cheek, probably the afterglow of good sex. Right back at you. You look very handsome yourself. I sat down and poured myself a glass of milk. Mabel set a plate of pasta down in front of me without a word. I suddenly thought the three of us could all be spies. I burst out laughing for no reason. Elijah stared at me, then smiled too, soft and warm. What's got you so happy, baby? Oh, nothing. I took your advice and tried someone new last night. It was great. I feel amazing. I said it like it was the most casual thing in the world. Mabel shot me a shocked look, then walked away without a word. Elijah froze mid-sip, then laughed it off. Baby, you don't have to lie to make me jealous. If you don't like the secretary, I can get rid of her. I'll pick someone you approve of before I sleep with them, yeah? I know she provoked you, and that's why you're mad. Don't worry. No one's gonna take your place as Mrs. Voss. I nodded half-heartedly. No need to get rid of her. She's fine. Young girls have their little tantrums, it's normal. I stretched, my back still a little sore, and sighed. Better than the ones who get greedy the second they think they've got you wrapped around their finger. Last night Lucas had been like a starved animal, wild and relentless. I'd barely been able to take it. He'd only stopped when I'd started crying, overstimulated and overwhelmed. Elijah's face darkened. He sneered through gritted teeth. Is that so? Then you'd better be nice to her from now on. After all, she's been taking care of a lot of your duties for you. He drew out the last word, thick with innuendo, staring right at me like he was waiting for me to snap. Instead, I pulled out my phone. My notifications were blowing up. I didn't even look up at him. Sure, I'll stay out of your way. Anything else? There's a gala this Friday. You're coming with me. He stormed off, furious. I blinked at his back, confused, then went back to texting Lucas. He'd sent, "When are you getting divorced?" My family's old-fashioned. I don't want to be the guy with no title. I texted back, "Soon. I'll be a widow soon enough." Real soon. Elijah was busy with work. And busy cheating. He didn't have time to bother me. I woke up in Lucas's huge penthouse apartment, soft morning light brushing my eyelids. The mattress dipped beside me. Lucas sat down in his silk robe, leaned down, and kissed me slow. "Evelyn, it's been a whole day. When are you gonna divorce Elijah?" He tried to look casual, but his eyes were fixed on me, tight and urgent. Is he refusing? It's fine. I can help you. I lifted a finger and pressed it to his lips, lazy and smiling. Don't rush. It'll happen soon. His jaw tightened. He pulled away, hurt and defensive. Don't feed me lines. From what I've heard, Elijah's been having the time of his life these past few days. He hasn't even called a lawyer to talk about divorce. I blinked. Lucas right now was almost bratty, like he knew he had me and wasn't afraid to show it. It was nothing like the man from my past life, who'd been so careful and reverent around me. Back then, maybe we'd both been older. Maybe it had taken him so long to win me over that he'd stopped caring about labels. Once, at a banquet, some clueless guy had toasted him. "Heard the big day's coming soon for you and Miss Moore. Have you set a date?" His fingers had tightened around his wine glass. His eyes had glinted behind his glasses. No rush. We're enjoying our time together. That night, he'd been rougher than usual. There was something he'd been holding back, something he'd never said out loud. I'd wrapped my arms around his neck, biting my lip to soothe him. I knew what he wanted. I just pretended I didn't. I'd been hurt too badly. I really hadn't wanted to get married again. Right before I'd woken up back here, we still hadn't made it official. I threw the covers off and stood up. "Relax. I'll give you that title soon. Trust me, okay? He looked up at me, unblinking. How soon? I thought for a second. This month. Lucas made amazing breakfast. I got ready. And we kissed goodbye at his front door. Sure you don't want me to drive you home? He cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. I was still breathless from the kiss. I laughed a little. No need. You want the whole world to know about us, huh? Yeah. He smiled, quiet and sharp. If Elijah can parade his mistress around, so can you. Imagine it. You on my arm, him on hers, we run into each other. Wouldn't that be perfect? I'd always known there was a wild streak under his calm exterior. Once, he'd told me if Elijah hadn't died, he would have gone after me anyway. He would have started by joining my gym. He'd read so many how to be the other man guides, planned out exactly what to wear to make me fall for him. He'd never even gotten the chance. His competition had dropped dead before he made a move. Thinking about it, I laughed and tapped his cheek. Fine. There's that industry mixer on Friday, right? You should come. He leaned down, nuzzling my neck like an overgrown puppy. I will. I'll dress up nice. I won't embarrass you. When I got back to the mansion, Elijah was actually home. He looked furious when he saw me walk in. Where have you been all morning? Why didn't you come home last night? Why didn't you answer your phone? I pulled out my phone and glanced at it. Casual as anything. Sorry, my phone died. He let out a long, slow breath, his gaze sharp as a blade. Then why didn't you come home? I suddenly laughed. I thought about the old days, after his company went public. I'd wait up for him every night. When he'd stumble home drunk, I'd ask him softly where he'd been. He'd always sounded annoyed. Work event, clients. Looking back now, my soft questions had been just as loaded. I'd suspected he was cheating, and he had been. Now he was the one suspecting me. But I had nothing to hide. I slept at my new guy's place. He laughed at that. Like he found it adorable, like he had me all figured out. Baby, you're so cute when you're trying to make me jealous. I told you. If you don't like Mia, I can replace her. You pick whoever you want. I won't touch anyone you don't approve of. Yeah? I laughed too, a bitter, angry laugh. What was wrong with his brain? Then again, the old me from this timeline had been a screaming, hysterical mess. Men like him were experts at driving women crazy. Then they'd shake their heads sadly in front of everyone. Like they were saying, look at me. I have to live with this lunatic. Poor me. I looked up at his smug, challenging smile, and nodded. Fine. Have your little harem casting call for all I care, as long as those women are willing. I've got no problem with it. But don't ask me to weigh in. You pick the women you want to sleep with, and I'll pick the men I want to sleep with. Simple. Maybe it was because I'd said it so many times now, that I actually meant it. He finally looked a little uncertain. Baby, are you? But he cut himself off. Don't forget the gala tomorrow. I have a surprise for you. I'm heading to the office. I stood in the doorway, watching him practically run away. My mouth twisted into a bitter smile. He'd finally noticed something was wrong with how I was acting. And his first instinct was to run. He was too much of a coward to lift the veil and face the truth. The man I'd once loved couldn't even be honest with himself. Friday night's industry gala was packed with all the biggest names in the business. Mia was there in a Chanel dress, a stunning necklace glittering around her neck. I recognized it immediately. In my past life, Elijah had dropped millions on it to spoil her, to punish me for stepping out of line. So all those excuses had been just that, excuses. This time around, I hadn't screamed or caused a scene. And he'd still bought it for her. Mrs. Voss, you keep staring at me. Do you like the sapphires? She leaned in, her voice soft and simpering. Mr. Voss got them for me. Just because. Do you want a set too? I do, actually. I nodded. I knew that sapphire necklace very well. When I'd reclaimed it as marital property, I'd put it up for auction and made millions more on top of what he'd paid. Why wouldn't I like adding more money to my bank account? When she didn't get the reaction she wanted, she gritted her teeth and leaned in lower. Mrs. Voss, stop pretending. We're both women. I know it's killing you inside. Last night, I wore this and nothing else and spent the most amazing night with Mr. Voss. Okay. Now I was actually bothered. I felt like my ears were dirty. I stepped back, frowning slightly. Can you please keep your bedroom drama to yourself? Some of us didn't come here to get secondhand cooties. Her eyes went wide with shock. I smiled sweetly and kept going. Actually, Miss Carter, was it? Elijah came home yesterday and said he wants someone new. He asked me to pick for him. I think you're both gross, and I don't want to be involved. Maybe you can pick his next girl for him? It's Parker. She snapped through gritted teeth. My name's Mia Parker. My bad, Miss Parker. I smiled politely. Oh, look, Elijah's coming over. Why don't you go keep him company? Elijah walked over with a glass of wine, smiling like nothing was wrong. What are you two ladies talking about, Having fun? I smiled right back, sweet as sugar. Your mistress was telling me all about your little kinks. I think it's gross, actually. Can you both stay away from me? I don't want to catch anything. Elijah froze mid-step. He shot Mia a furious look. That's enough. Take your trashy little story somewhere else. Get out of my sight. Mia's lip trembled. Mr. Voss? I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray and settled in to watch the show. The waiter holding the tray looked like he was dying to stay and listen, but forced himself to walk away. I've told you 100 times, know your place. The only woman I love is my wife. His face was cold, like he was genuinely angry. Mia had been faking her tears before, but now they started falling for real. She stared at him, disbelieving. I thought I was special to you. Having fun without me? A low voice came from right behind me. My face lit up. I turned around so fast I almost tripped. A strong, steady hand caught me by the waist. Warm fingers pressed into my side for a heartbeat, then let go. Lucas was wearing a tailored black suit, his hair styled back, all his sharp, handsome features were on full display. He looked devastatingly good. He was wearing cologne, too, a soft, warm scent I recognized immediately. It was the perfume I was wearing right now. He stood at my side, smiling softly. Easy there, Evelyn, one of the other CEOs, who'd been about to schmooze with Elijah, laughed awkwardly. Ah, Mr. Voss, Mrs. Voss, what a lovely couple you to make. No one said anything. The silence stretched on, thick and awkward, but Lucas acted like nothing was wrong. He took the champagne glass from my hand, swirled it slowly until he found my lipstick print on the rim, and drained it in one sip. Good wine. Storm clouds gathered on Elijah's face. A vein bulged in his temple. Lucas Davenport, are you screwing my wife? Lucas shook his head slowly, like he was disappointed. Elijah, that's not how it was. He was taller than Elijah, and when he looked down at him, it was with cold, unmistakable contempt. Evelyn and I knew each other first. We grew up together. If you hadn't come between us, we'd have kids by now. Get it? You're the homewrecker, not me. Wow. Even I was a little stunned by the audacity of that logic. I turned to stare at him. He just looked back at me, all sweet and innocent, like he was begging for backup. Evelyn, tell him I'm right. I nodded, speechless. He preened like he'd just won a fight, grinning at Elijah. See that, Mr. Voss? Elijah's answer was a fist flying straight for his face. You son of a bitch. I'll beat the shit out of you, you home-wrecking bastard. Chaos erupted. Lucas didn't flinch. He took the punch full on. Then he grabbed Elijah by the collar, his voice low and deadly calm. Elijah, when I invested in your company, when I gave you that life-saving order, do you remember what I said to you? Panic flashed across Elijah's face. He glanced at me, quick and guilty. I wasn't looking at him. I was staring at Lucas, stunned. In my whole past life, he'd never told me he'd made Elijah promise anything. Lucas spoke slow, sharp, every word like a blade. Let me remind you, Evelyn's my classmate from high school, Mr. Voss. I hear you to her college sweethearts. Treat her right. She loves you more than anything. I want you to be happy. His voice rose, sharp with fury. By the end, did you do any of that? Did you ever treat her right? He threw his own punch, hard and heavy, right back at Elijah. Elijah Voss, you're not even a man. He stared down at Elijah, crumpled on the floor, pure contempt in his eyes. The other guests just stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do. Mia was crying, kneeling next to Elijah. Lucas looked over at me, nervous all of a sudden. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I lost my temper. I blinked. I spoke soft, to calm him down. It's okay. I don't mind, but it didn't seem to reassure him. His sharp eyes went soft, worried. Evelyn, are you having second thoughts? Do you not want to divorce him after all? Before I could answer, Elijah laughed from the floor, bitter and cruel. You don't know how much she loves me, do you? Leave me? For you? God, I was so sick of hearing it. Stop reminding me I used to have terrible taste in men. I grabbed Lucas by his tie, pulled him down, and kissed him hard. He froze for half a second, then kissed me back. Hungry and desperate, when we pulled apart, I was breathless. I turned to look at Elijah on the floor, and sneered. Get it through your head? Love you? I'd rather love a stray dog off the street. At least he'd bark when I come home, and wag his tail for me. I watched the light go out of Elijah's eyes. Inch by inch, his face went pale. then twisted into something ugly and broken. I was just starting to feel satisfied when the man whose tie I was still holding spoke up, quiet as anything. Woof. I whipped my head around, staring at him in disbelief. Lucas's ears were bright red. His voice was soft, almost shy. What? I can be your dog too, ahem. Perhaps everyone should take this to the lounge. The event organizers, having had their fill of drama, finally stepped in. In the private lounge, Mia was sniffling, holding an ice pack to Elijah's face. I sat on the other side of the room, holding Lucas's hand. He didn't say anything, just laced our fingers together and played with my rings, over and over. Elijah was the first one to snap. He sneered, every word sharp with rage. Evelyn, I'll die before I give you a divorce. I'm never letting you sick bastards get what you want. Lucas's hand tightened. He was about to speak, but I squeezed his hand and shook my head. I looked at Elijah, calm as anything. Suit yourself. I'm not in a hurry. It hadn't been that long since I'd woken up back here, but in just a few days, I'd already grown completely tired of the man I'd once loved. In my past life, he'd died so suddenly. I'd lain awake night after night, hating him so much I'd wanted to kill him with my own two hands. I dreamed of finding him in the afterlife, grabbing him by the hair and screaming, "Why? Why did you cheat on me?" But then, the luxury, the easy life, the man who loved me right, it had all washed the hate away. But now, seeing him again, knowing exactly who and what he was, there was only one question left that I was curious about. Is that why you cheated? Because you thought Lucas and I had something going on? Yes. You lied to me, told me I was your first love. Did you think I couldn't tell? All those years ago, every time he looked at you, it was written all over his face. He was shaking with rage. I loved you so much. And you made a fool out of me. I did it to get back at you. Lucas shifted, uncomfortable. He tried to speak, but I sighed and leaned back against his chest, staring straight at Elijah's furious face. Stop making excuses. If you had that much pride, why'd you take his money? If you loved me so much, did I force you to sleep with Mia? Did I force you to sleep with all those young, pretty girls? Elijah, you can be a piece of shit all you want, but don't lie to everyone and don't lie to yourself and call it love. I looked him dead in the eye, watching his face crumple with panic, and said the last thing I needed to say. Your love is rotten. I don't want it anymore. I really didn't mean to interfere back then. Things were just so hard for you too, financially. I just wanted you to be happy. The night wind was soft. I held Lucas's hand as we walked, and he rambled nervously beside me, trying to explain. I know. I cupped his face, soothing him. He'd gone abroad right after college, come back to take over his family's company. If he hadn't been paying attention to me, Elijah's tiny startup would have never crossed his radar. If Elijah had a problem with it, he could have turned down the money, or he could have come home and asked me about it. Instead, he used his own petty little assumptions about us as an excuse to cheat on his wife. I rested my head on his shoulder and smiled, but it's all in the past now. None of it matters. The night wind wrapped around us, soft and warm, and our voices faded into the dark. The news of Elijah's death came 3 days later. He'd been avoiding me all week, hadn't come home once, but he died the exact same way he had in my past life. Well, almost the same. This time, he'd been in a car crash. The crash itself hadn't killed him. The cause of death was a ruptured brain aneurysm. It had burst at just the wrong moment. By the time anyone found him, it was already too late. Mia had been in the car with him when the police investigated. She couldn't explain what had caused the crash. Not until they pulled the dashcam footage. Elijah had told her he was going to end things and go back to his wife. Mia had snapped and started screaming at him. In the middle of the fight, she'd grabbed the steering wheel. Mia was arrested and charged with endangering public safety. Elijah's funeral was held a few days later. I planned everything easily. After all, I'd done this once before. The rain was falling soft and steady. Lucas stood beside me, holding an umbrella over my head. I'd just finished thanking a guest who'd squeezed my hand in condolences when he spoke from behind me, quiet and smiling. Congratulations, Evelyn. Hey there, could you rate this story in the comments? Use a scale of 1 to 10. Please, I'm begging you. It really means a lot to me, and if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit follow.